Happy Wednesday, Bullfrogs. All right, so we're going to read 2 chapters from our Christmas in Camelot. We are on chapter 13 and 14. Chapter 13 is called Your Horses Are Waiting. I don't believe what just happened, said Jack. What part don't you believe, said Annie, holding the silver cup. Jack laughed and shook his head. I don't believe any of it, he said. Annie laughed too. That was cool, huh? Jack pushed his glasses into place and stared at her. Seriously, what just happened in there? He asked. I imagined us fighting the keepers with flaming swords, said Annie. What did you imagine? Jack shrugged. I just imagined the keepers going back in their holes, he said. Good, said Annie. We both got what we imagined. Yeah, said Jack, smiling. But what you imagined made a much better story. A shriek of fury came from inside the cave. Yikes, said Annie. Let's get out of here, said Jack. He scrambled to his feet, and together they climbed back down over the big rocks to the thicket. Annie moved very carefully to keep from spilling the water in the cup. When they came to the thicket, Jack pulled out Sir Percival's compass. If we came west to get here, we have to go east to get back. He said, east is that way. As they started into the wild growth, Jack went first so he could clear the way for Annie. Without talking, they pushed steadily through the trees and bushes, moving farther and farther up from the keeper's cave. Finally, they heard music in the distance. They walked closer and closer toward the sound until they stepped back into the green glade. The winged dancers were still there, dancing in their magic circle. Jack's heart raced. He wanted to join them again, but he knew that if he did, he would never escape their dance. Look, said Annie, the knights are awake. Sir Lancelot, Sir Galahad, and Sir Percival were standing just beyond the circle of dancers. They were buckling on their swords. Hi, called Annie. Guess what? We got it. The knights walked shakily toward Jack and Annie. They still looked thin and tired, but color had returned to their cheeks. We have the water of memory and imagination, said Annie. She held up the silver cup. The knights smiled. Now we just have to get it back to Camelot, said Jack. We would like to help you, said Sir Lancelot. But it seems we have lost our 3 horses. No, you haven't, said Annie. Your horses are waiting for you. They're on the other side of the hill, said Jack. Jack and Annie led the knights over the hill. On their way, Jack picked up the red velvet cloak. When they came to the meadow, they saw the 3 horses. The horses neighed and cantered over to the knights. As Sir Lancelot stroked the mane of the black horse, he turned to Jack and Annie. You can both ride back to Camelot with me, he said. Thanks, they said. Jack fastened the red cloak around his neck. Sir Lancelot helped them onto the back of his horse, then climbed on himself. Annie sat behind Lancelot. She held on to the knight with her right hand. She held the silver cup in her left hand. Can you carry the water without spilling it? Jack asked her, worried. I'll try, she said. Sir Galahad mounted the brown horse, and Sir Percival climbed on the gray horse. Then the 3 knights started through the pale green meadow. Careful, careful, Jack whispered to Annie. I got it, she said. When they came to the iron gate, the knights drew their swords. Open the gate in the name of King Arthur of Camelot, Sir Lancelot called. Though he still sounded hoarse, the knight's deep voice carried an amazing strength. Here they are trying to get through the gate. The iron gate slowly swung open. Sir Lancelot urged his horse onward. The guards watched silently as the knights passed by them and started across the bridge. The 3 horses trod in single file over the wooden planks. Again, Jack was amazed by the difference between this world and the other world. Here it was dark and freezing and foggy. The red cloak flapped in the bitter wind. As the horses stepped off the bridge, they each neighed loudly. Oh, wow, whispered Annie. Standing high on a rock in a swirl of fog was the white stag. All right, chapter 14 is called Return. The three knights gazed in wonder at the white stag. Here, take this, Annie said to Jack. She handed him the silver cup. Then she slipped off the back of Lancelot's horse and ran to the stag. Thanks for coming for us, she cried, throwing her arms around his neck. The three knights looked at Jack. That's the white stag, said Jack. He brought us here. Are you wizards? Sir Percival asked in a hushed voice. No, just ordinary kids, said Jack. But I know he's magic. We got here from Camelot in no time at all. I guess he's come to take us back. Then you must go with him, said Sir Lancelot. You will have a much faster journey, I can assure you. Sir Lancelot held the silver cup as Jack slipped down from the black horse. Then Jack took the cup and carefully climbed onto the back of the stag behind Annie. He held the cup with both hands as the stag stood up. Tell King Arthur we will return to Camelot before the first night of the new year, said Sir Lancelot. Farewell, Jack and Annie, said Sir Galahad. Godspeed, said Sir Percival. Same to you, said Annie. Have a safe trip, said Jack. The knights solemnly bowed. The white stag blew out a puff of frosty air. Then he started down the mountainside. When the stag came to the base of the mountain, he took off again like a white comet. The red cloak billowed around Jack and Annie, keeping them warm and safe. The stag dashed across the wintry fields. He ran past quiet stables and thatched huts. He ran past flocks of sheep and herds of goats asleep in meadows. He leaped over frozen streams and stone walls and hedgerows. The stag ran on and on through the starry night until he brought Jack and Annie back to the dark castle grounds of Camelot. He walked over the frozen grass of the outer courtyard. He came to a halt near the grove below the treehouse. He knelt in the grass and Jack and Annie climbed off his back. Miraculously, the silver cup was still brimmed with water from the cauldron. Not a drop had spilled out. We'd better leave the cloak here, said Jack, so I don't trip on it. Jack carefully set the cup on the ground. Annie helped him unbutton the red velvet cloak from around his neck. Then she draped it over the stag's back. To keep you warm and safe, she whispered to him, and thanks for everything. Yeah, thanks, said Jack. Goodbye. The white stag stared at them with his mysterious amber eyes. He nodded once. Then he turned and headed into the darkness. Jack picked up the cup. Come on, he said. He started walking quickly through the outer courtyard. Careful, careful, said Annie. I got it, said Jack. They crossed the drawbridge to the inner courtyard of the castle. Then they pushed open the giant arched doors. The great hall was just as they had left it, dimly lit and freezing cold. King Arthur, Queen Guinevere, the knights of the Round Table, and Morgan Le Fay were all still frozen and silent. What do we do now? Said Jack. Let's try putting a drop of water on each of them. Morgan first, said Annie. Okay, said Jack. Come on. Holding his breath and keeping his eyes on the cup, Jack walked carefully toward the round table. All right, so here's a picture of them. He's got the cup in his hand, and see, they're frozen. Suddenly, his left foot stepped on the shoelace of his right sneaker, and he stumbled. Jack, Jack, yelled Annie. Jack tried to regain his balance, but it was too late. As he fell to the floor, the silver cup slipped from his hands. Can you believe that? All right, tomorrow we will read chapter 15, Christmas Magic is the title. All right, we'll have to wait and see what happened. Thank y'all for reading with me today. See you tomorrow. Bye.